So what this is saying is that the U.S. wants you to pay at least a minimum tax rate no matter where you are. And that tax rate is somewhere between 10 and 15%. That's the overall range of global tax that they want you to pay. And if you're at 30% or above, they don't bother you. They say they're taxing you enough. Actually, I think that's the Ireland rate. It's 13 or 14%. I think that may have been the benchmark. So they said if you're taxed at that rate, we're okay with that money, which means if you earn income offshore, right, and that income is taxed all the way up to this 13% rate, you don't need to pay any federal tax on this income. If you're below that rate, then they have a concept that they enacted with the tax reform, which is a concept where they tax you on a concept, on a word they call the global intangible income. Right? This concept essentially says, what is your profitability? Well, it's X, and they measure that starting with your tangible assets. They're going to say, not intangible, which is very interesting. They say, let's take a look at your tangible assets, brick and mortar, your chairs, your computers, the building that you own, etc. Multiply that by 10%, right? If you make income above that threshold, you have created this concept of intangible income, and we want to tax it. So if that income is not being taxed at a rate which is 30% or more, I'll ask you to put it in your federal return right now. Don't wait anymore, just put it in. So therefore, this concept applies to the globe. With this concept of, wow, if somebody's planning around the planet in terms of what their effective tax rate is, I'll think if you're a multinational, offshore, the lowest you can get is 10-13%. That's the number. So what happens with Puerto Rico? We have 4% income tax rates, right? On every law, you like tourism incentives law, you take the manufacturing laws, you take the Act 20, you take the international financial entity law, all of them 4% tax rate. So we're below the threshold. So broad terms means this thing applies to us. We need to look at it. Now, do we really need to pay it? That's the second part. We know it applies. Now, do we need to pay it? Well, this is where it gets unique to be here. Because if the owners of that entity, of that foreign entity, which is foreign for federal, this Puerto Rico operation, if the owners are Puerto Rico residents, right, and they own 50.1% and on, right, of the value of the shares, then this rule doesn't apply. All right? Which, again, when I looked at this provision and tried to position any other type of activity out there for a U.S. person, this jurisdiction and the USVI will be the only two places where you can locate a company that pays a low tax rate and only pay that tax, only pay the country low rate, not be subject to the U.S. tax. So that makes now these possessions unique in the planet in the concept of international tax planning. And when we look at international tax planning, we're staring always at the multinationals. But I assure you that the vast majority of the businesses are not multinationals. The numbers are huge in terms of privately owned businesses versus multinationals. So yes, these are businesses that are owned, family owned, that can make decisions as to where they may be, where the owners may reside. So for those operations, which may be operations, and it's interesting because the concept in my mind for this, we're talking about family-owned businesses in a nutshell, or privately owned businesses that make less than $500 million. That is the threshold. That's almost the whole planet. in terms of businesses. There are few businesses in the, when you look at the list in the Chamber of Commerce that make $500 million and up. So the vast majority of businesses are still eligible for an Act 20 treatment, especially if the owners decide to relocate to Puerto Rico. And so they will be in a unique position compared to anywhere else in the world if they are able to accomplish this. So that's why it's significant within the context of international taxation will be quite unique art.